An emergency hearing in a legal fight that goes right to the heart of the limits on President Trump's power. The question on paper, can the President of the United States fire someone citing a crime that they haven't even been charged with? The person, Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook. She is the first black woman to serve on the board that helps set interest rates. Interest rates President Trump believes should be lower, and she's also the first Fed governor ever to be fired by a president. That came after the Justice Department said it's investigating Cook for mortgage fraud based on a criminal referral from inside the Trump administration. And just today, a housing official sent a second criminal referral to the DOJ. Now, Cook's attorney denied there was any validity to the allegations. And to be clear, a referral is not a charge, it's not an indictment, and it's certainly not a conviction. But to the vice president, that distinction doesn't matter.
Whether it's criminal, whether it's intentional or not, we know that this is a person, I think, who doesn't meet the standard that we should expect for the Federal Reserve, which is why the president fired her. And he does have the legal right to fire her.
Well, Cook is suing to keep her job on the board, and today's emergency hearing was over her request to stay while her legal challenge plays out. Now, the judge in this case, a Biden appointee, held off making an initial ruling and didn't seem fully swayed by either side. Now, this is not the first high-profile firing by the president, whose television catchphrase was "You're fired." He has overseen the firings of thousands of people just in the last few months. The barrage of pink slips triggered so many lawsuits we couldn't fit them all on the screen right here. Some have been dismissed, others are still being argued. The Supreme Court already weighed in on one. And out of all of those, this one job in particular stands out. Here's why. Lisa Cook works for the Federal Reserve, and the nation's central bank is supposed to operate independently. That's so people like her can make economic decisions without pressure to align with any political mission. Well, this administration is clear that's the problem.
I don't think that we allow bureaucrats to sit from on high and make decisions about monetary policy and interest rates without any input from the people that were elected to serve the American people. And I think that's fundamentally what this is about.
My sources tonight are legal professor Kim Whaley, former communications director of the DNC, Karen Finney, and Republican strategist Sir Michael Singleton. Great to see all three of you on this Friday night. Welcome to the party here. So I want to start with you, Kim, just to take a step back and look at the big picture here so that we understand, because I think some people may hear, well, who's Lisa Cook and what does a Federal Reserve governor do? But what are the stakes here in terms of how it could impact every American's life and the precedent it could set?
Well, this is important because it affects monetary policy. But just to be clear, the Supreme Court in two other cases with other heads of agencies has already, in emergency proceedings, allowed Donald Trump to fire people even though there's a cause provision in the statute. So basically, Congress said, with respect to these people, you have to have a good reason. The Supreme Court held 90 years ago that Congress can do that. This is becoming a showdown as to whether this reason's a good enough reason. And I think her argument is that it's pretextual. Her lawyers are saying, listen, you manufactured a reason so that the president can control monetary policy. That's a really novel question, Pam. It's really thorny. I don't know that she gets this trial on that question of whether she can keep her job or not. And in the meantime, I think her reputation is being smeared, which is unfortunate. As far as the legal implications, at the end of the day, this Supreme Court is very clear on broad executive power, broad presidential power, particularly when it comes to employees within the chain of command to the president.
I want to bring you in, Sir Michael, because, you know, if the president can fire a Fed governor, which, as we noted, has not been done before, where do you see the limits of the president's power being?
I mean, look, I think you got to have some limitations. I mean, I understand the arguments from the executive. I'm not necessarily fond of how this is happening with Dr. Cook, and I'm referring to her as Dr. Cook because she has a PhD in economics. If the president disagrees with the monetary decisions of some of the Fed board members, I understand. I get it. I've been calling for us to drop and lower interest rates for months now for a number of reasons. So I'm in agreement there. I think you can do that without smearing her. I mean, I've heard folks calling her DEI hire. This is a woman who went to Spelman College. She went to Oxford. She has a PhD from UCLA Berkeley. This is clearly someone who's qualified for the role. And I'm all for intellectual disagreements and debates. That's the part of politics that I enjoy the most. But I think we can have those disagreements without smearing her, and the undertones really bothered me. You want to fire somebody, fire them and move on. You should be able to do that without all of the baggage that comes along with it. I'm not a big fan of that.
Let me just follow up on that. Why do you think that President Trump then targeted her specifically?
Well, this is what I was told. I reached out to a couple of folks today, and what I was told was they looked into multiple people, and that apparently others may be coming soon at some point. So it may not just stop with Dr. Cook. There may be another 1 or 2 individuals appointed by President Biden, as she was, who may also find themselves in the crosshairs of the administration pretty soon.
But that goes to, I think, a very important underpinning of this in terms of the why this is really happening. Because there's the legal case, which who knows how that's going to shake out. But then there's the politics. You know, this is about controlling monetary policy. He tried to go after the Fed chair. That wasn't working. The markets didn't like it. Business leaders did not like it. And so now he's trying to basically control the people who control decisions about monetary policy. Why? Because he does not have a plan, from my perspective, our perspective, the Democrats, to deal with the economy. I mean, he was elected, number one reason, get costs down. Costs are not down. Things are not affordable. And inflation is up. So instead of some kind of policy around how he's going to deal with that, over and over and over again, we hear about the tariffs, and we hear him blaming the Fed for not lowering rates. That seems to be it. And so, you know, this sort of strategy, and I think what Shermichael says sort of confirms it. So it's not just going to be her. He wants to have,
we have to independently report
potentially,
that out,
you know, potentially could be an attempt to try to control all of the members and to try to, and the administration has talked about wanting to have that kind of control of lots of the different levers of government, which I think, you know, again, at some point there are Americans who say, I'm not comfortable with that. That is not the Constitution. That is not the country that that's not our values in this country. And the way he's going about it, as with so many things, is just, you know, what about due process? What about, you know, the fact that she has said it was a clerical error. You know, what about her opportunity to make her case before you go ahead and smear her, this distinguished woman, a distinguished economist? So